The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericaempowerment.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
We live in a fast-paced, hectic world where it is easy to feel overwhelmed, stressed, and out of control. How do you manage all the competing pressures without losing your sense of yourself? How do you stay focused enough to not only plot a path, but follow it? Welcome to Master Your Life, a show that offers inspiration, insight, and intelligence, as well as success stories from many walks of life that can show you how you can control your own destiny. Our knowledgeable and entertaining hosts and their guests give practical advice that you can use every day in the quest to master your life. Now, here are your hosts, Leaha Mattinson and Dr. Howard Rankin.
Welcome to Master Your Life, a show of insight, intelligence, and inspiration for people who are looking to improve their life and improve the lives of those around them. I'm joined today by my wonderful co-host, Dr. Howard Rankin. Howard, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing great, Leah. Thank you so much. How are you?
I'm fantastic, as usual. I'm really excited about today's New Year's show because I just think that in the new year, one of the things that people love to look at, and me in my coaching practice, we definitely see this all the time, is how do I have a better life than I had last year? And sometimes we're a little bit more reflective about those things. And in today's show, we're actually going to dig into that. And you have some exciting news about a new book that you have in the cooker. So maybe you could just tell us about your new book, Howard.
Yeah, my new book, which right now is called Facing Up, The Art and Science of Redemption, comes out of some of the experiences that I shared with listeners when we first started our show way back when, about the difficulties I had, the mistakes and stumbles I made, and the insights that I got from doing that. And so partly that, partly understanding that from a sort of science, psychological, behavioral neuroscience perspective, also understanding it from a faith perspective. And on that score, there was something interesting that happened this week that perhaps is very relevant. Our church has a ministry for prisoners. It's called Kairos. And our community, is asked to bake or provide cookies for the prisoners in a local penitentiary. And it is cool. And I did not go. There's only a small group that go. I did not go this time, but it's not untypical, and it happened this time, that the prisoners in this particular penitentiary were totally blown away that anyone would just gratuitously and generously do something like that for them.
Mm-hmm. And so why do you think they were so blown away?
Well, I think that when you do a stumble, when you do screw up in life, as we all do, yes, there's part of it where part of you is going to be angry and disbelieve it, and we're going to talk about those processes, but also part of you is very angry with yourself. And I think it's very easy to see yourself then paint yourself as unlovable, unworthy, useless. The shame and disgrace and humiliation comes into play. And so when somebody, and I certainly know this from my personal experience, and I shared it in that first show we did, when somebody reached out to me when I was in the depths of the aggravation that I was going through and said, "Howard, are you doing okay? And I really want to know how you're doing." That meant everything to me, because it's very easy in a situation like that to assume, the whole world now sees me in a particular way and they're against me.
Right. And I think many listeners of the show, again, are interested in mastering their life. And you're really only interested in mastering your life when you actually already have some awarenesses that you're struggling. So and then you go, I really do want to dig into what are these things that are kind of getting in my way of really living this life that I really have visioned for myself. And this disparity between the vision that we have and the reality that we're living in each area of our life really do disconnect us. So the prisoner story is a great story because I do think it's that you disconnect when you do something that is offside, as I'll call it. Yep. You may disconnect from loving yourself actually at a really at an authentic, true level. And when you can't love yourself, it's really amazing and difficult to accept love from other people. And so I love the title of this book, Facing Up, the Art and Science of Redemption. I think that's very plain speaking to people who are going through any kind of turmoil in their life. And as you so eloquently pointed out, I can't think of one single person in the span of my life, for sure, that has not fallen off the wagon, done something they felt embarrassed about, and maybe even ashamed, yes, or some part of their life became not the way they imagined it would be. So I think this book can speak to every single person on the planet, really, maybe other than a baby.
Yes, maybe. I'm reminded of Mark Twain's comment, human beings are the only species that blush or need to.
Right. Yes. So let's talk about blushing. Let's talk about that physiological reaction and response to what causes us to blush.
I think it's a good question. Being found out, perhaps, realizing the game's up, whatever game we're playing. Right. There's an embarrassment there because, you're found out.
So, Howard, can we make ourselves blush?
Yeah, I think so. I think that if we're honest with ourselves, and that's hard, we can rationalize anything, right? So even if we knew, hey, look, we did something and probably the right thing to do, we can rationalize it and say, well, it's really not that bad. A lot of people do worse things than that. Come on. And not really realistically deal with it. I think you can only begin to deal realistically with it if you're prepared to talk to others about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there's this neat little structure in our own bodies that actually sends us a signal that we're doing things that's off course. So if we're aware enough of that, so blushing is a great signal and a great indicator that even maybe in our conscience is kind of tickling us or nudging us to notice when we're doing stuff that is actually not in alignment with what we vision for our lives. And it's such a cool thing to understand that our body is physiologically, like we're wired to know when we're starting to kind of go off track. And so part of the gift of this, I think, show is actually just talking about how do we pay a little more attention to those physiological things that go on that would give us a heads up before we wade full on into the next drama or trauma that might be ready to unfold.
Well, let's just back up a little bit because you're talking about neurology, and there is a new field of what's called neurocriminology, which looks at the brains of offenders and people who've committed crimes, and there are differences. In fact, there are two differences, and a lot of this work has been done by a guy called Adrian Raine, R-A-I-N-E, if listeners are interested in looking up his work. At this point, there are two main findings. One, a lot of offenders don't have a very strong frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe is, the seat of judgment and the neurological basis of doing what you're just suggesting, looking at yourself and owning up. And judging yourself. So that's one type of issue. The other issue is a much smaller emotional area of the brain, which seems to imply that people don't have a conscience or don't feel the discomfort or the embarrassment. And these would probably be the psychopaths who probably would never blush because it doesn't mean anything to them.
Right.
So interestingly, there is a neurological component here that drives our behavior. And yes, we do want to get our frontal lobes functioning, the area of judgment and thinking, and honestly look at that and say, is this acceptable? And perhaps one question to ask is, if somebody had done this to me or somebody else had done exactly the same thing, how would I view it?
Right. And just going back to the frontal lobe for 1 second, it is also the seat of impulse control. So, so when there's been injury to the head, especially things like concussions and that, we often see people will have these changes in their behavior where once upon a time maybe they actually had fairly good impulse control and had the ability to be introspective, and then we'll see this change in them and we'll go, well, what in the world is going on with them? They used to be so in control or so able to make good decisions, and there's different times in the life of a brain where these things are affected. But it's just good to note that sometimes these things are not a personality problem per se, but a brain dysfunction. So being able to, differentiate those two things is also, we ask you to think about what it is, you want in your life and how it is you want to be. But in terms of differentiating, if something is chosen or if something is a result of an actual brain misfunction, that those two things would be dealt with very differently. In terms of how to manage them and strategize and come up with great solutions. So for today, though, we're going to focus on the idea of redemption with a great functioning brain.
Yeah, and interestingly, there's that classic historic study of a guy called Phineas Gage, who I believe was a railroad worker and got a piece of metal right through his frontal lobe, and his personality completely changed. He was totally impulsive, and that was the beginning of, the case studies looking at the role of the frontal lobe. We have to assume, and people are going to vary in their ability to do this, but the goal still surely is to monitor yourself and be honest with yourself. And frankly, if you're not honest with yourself, there's part of you that knows that. And it manifests itself in different ways, in discomfort, in stress. So being honest with yourself, and of course you do need to be trained how to be honest with yourself, is the first step, I think, in recognizing on the road to redemption, because redemption is, first of all, you got to face up to whatever it is you've done. You got to face up to that, and you have to accept responsibility for it.
Right. And so what would some of the examples, I think, current day examples be when people are going, redemption, I'm not sure if I'm picking up what you're laying down. What would be some of the things that people might need redemption from? What would be examples of things where people will have gone, oh, that was not in alignment with the behavior that is, quote unquote, right?
Well, honestly, it could be anything, couldn't it? From shoplifting to sexual violence, to being really nasty or manipulative to a friend or a family member. Honestly, there's a gazillion things it could be, unfortunately. And part of that is, does that behavior really match who you are? And if it doesn't, is that who you want to be or not? And the problem with redemption is facing up to it, facing up to whatever it is that you have done, because nobody likes discomfort, and so we will try to minimize discomfort. We will minimize it by saying, I really didn't do that, or it's not really that bad, or you're really exaggerating. And some of that's probably going to be true, be honest, because it's not perfect, but that doesn't obviate the need for you to be honest with yourself.
Right. And I think even the word discomfort is a word that minimizes the amount of pain that people feel when they do stuff that is, offside. So it's like anguish, pain, hurt, deep hurt. Those are, and it can be deep hurt of things that you've done for yourself, betrayal, and that emotes. Those emotions are like the true emotions that you feel. So I think even simple examples of if you say you're going to be on time for things and you're not on time, that those are just even those little places where you don't show up the way you said you were going to. And then all of a sudden it's like you're not in alignment with who you said you were going to be. And so it's not big things like, it doesn't necessarily need to be big things like cheating on a spouse or being fraudulent in your business. Right. Because different people will have the same amount of emotion for being late as they will have for doing something that's what I think people would like to call the big deeds, the big dirty deeds. And our soul doesn't differentiate those things. Yeah,
and when you look at how human beings deal with discomfort, those sort of defense mechanisms, there are very adaptive mechanisms, which we'll talk about because they are part of that redemptive journey. But there's also pathological defense mechanisms, which are things like denial. I did not do that. It did not happen. Or projection. No, I didn't. You did that, not me, and a variety of maladaptive, immature, and pathological defenses that don't help. They keep you stuck. The only way you can find redemption is facing up to what has happened and dealing with that effectively through some of the techniques that we will talk about and the processes we'll talk about in the second part of the show.
Right. And so I think we'll be delving into the also stages of grief, kind of revenge fantasies, how do you pragmatically do these things of recognizing and facing up to what you've done, but then what do you do with that? And who are the people who are going to support you and who are the people who are not going to support you? Because that can also get in the way of having a clean slate, and that whole idea of having a clean slate. What does that mean, and where do we go forward from that position? So when we come back to Master Your Life, we'll be talking about Howard's new book, Facing Up: The Art and Science of Redemption. And where you can reach us is at reallifetraining.com and psychologywriter.com. So after the break, we'll pick it up with Howard on Facing Up: The Art and Science of Redemption.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
If you've been searching for fat loss and mental clarity in one place, think ketosis. Maybe you've heard about a ketogenic diet but have been totally turned off by the painstaking effort to do it. Well, agonize no longer, because there is a solution. What could be just as simple and easy as taking your daily vitamins? Visit reallifetraining.expert to find out. Raise your hand and get in on the front end of the total wellness revolution. Get well, manage your mood, clear your mind. Visit reallifetraining.expert now.
Moving forward can be difficult to do sometimes. There is always something going on. Many times, nobody else knows exactly what you're going through. If you are experiencing pain or loss, even something that is unexplained that is missing in your life, you'll want to tune into Go For It with host Joe Hausman. Joe and her guests will show you laughter and love. Sometimes you just need something a little positive in your week. Make that spot Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern Time, 6 a.m. Pacific Time on Voice America Empowerment.
When you make decisions, do you ever find yourself in doubt? Are you trying to figure out what's right with you? Are you ready to truly change your life? Listen for the Access Consciousness radio show with the founders of Access Consciousness, Gary Douglas and Dr. Dane Heer. Consciousness is all about including everything and judging nothing. Our program will help you break free from your personal limitations and enhance positive change in all areas of your life. Tune in to Access Consciousness, Thursdays at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern on Voice America Empowerment.
Friend us on Facebook to keep up with what's empowering the world. Voice America Empowerment.
You
You are tuned in to Master Your Life. To reach Leaha Mattinson, Dr. Howard Rankin, or their guest, please call in to 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. Or send an email to Leaha, that's Leaha, at changeyourlife.expert. Now, back to Master Your Life.
Welcome back to Master Your Life. I'm Leaha Mattinson, joined by my co-host, Dr. Howard Rankin, and today we're talking about redemption and grace and forgiveness in the whole embodiment of redemption. So before the break, we were talking about facing up. And now that we have faced up to the proverbial whatever it is that we have done wrong, we need to figure out what we're going to do with that. So I have taken ownership of that I have done this thing wrong. And now, what is it? Where are we going to start with fixing this current problem? And so, Howard, just love to dive into what are the 5 stages of grief and how do we move through those things?
Well, the 5 stages of grief are somewhat relevant to redemption. And the 5 stages are denial, and we just talked about, look, you can't deny, you have to face up. Anger at yourself, maybe anger at others. Bargaining, again with yourself and maybe with others. Oh, it's really not that bad. How can I, make the best of this? Depression, and then the final stage, acceptance, which is, okay, here's what I did. I will own up to it. Now I'm going to have to find a way back from this position I'm in because, it is a pretty depressing situation. When that happened to me and I lost my license and I was in the newspaper, pretty depressing stuff, I have to tell you. And it does dominate your thinking. Mm-hmm. And the danger is you get stuck there, and you just simply cannot afford to be stuck there. You can't be stuck in revenge fantasies, and I should say those stages, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance, you don't smoothly jump from one to the other. They're kind of hovering around a lot of the time.
Right. Yes.
Even in acceptance, you can still have some revenge fantasies about, other people and their role in whatever. Right. So it is important to recognize that. I think one of the things is very, very important. You have to live in the present and you can't live in the past. And one of the natural things for people to do is try to go back and make it all better. Mm-hmm. You can't go back. You can only go forward, or you can be stuck. Mm-hmm. If you just going to obsess about this and all of those things we talked about, and you're stuck, and you cannot move forward, you're in trouble. You're like Lot's wife, who looked back, could only look back, and was turned into a pillar of salt.
Yes.
You will be turned into a pillar of salt if you cannot get some forward momentum.
Right. And so these falling from grace happens throughout everyone's life. Multiple times. Yes. and that whole, it is completely, when you say falling from grace, we have an idea of ourselves that is sometimes accurate and sometimes not accurate. But if we get to a stage of almost comfort with ourselves, where we feel like we're doing okay and things are good, and then someone comes along or some awareness comes along and rips off the Band-Aid, or we do something that is out of alignment and go, oh my Lord, I am not who I thought I was. And so that whole going through the grieving process, you can look at it. It's really cool to look at it like exciting also, and going, oh, okay, I know what's coming. Like once you understand that it is a process, you can be excited about being depressed because you can go, and it's just a different way to position it, but going, oh, it's like, okay, I actually feel a real feeling, which is depression. And I know that there's a way to get out of this feeling. I just need to do some things differently, which is an empowering sort of a position to be in. And just like you said, though, the not getting stuck or trapped or ruminating on things or going back over and over and over again. And I see people doing this regularly on the news, because the news just keeps replaying the things that have gone wrong over and over and over and over. And we watch it. So it's not like we watch it one time. We need to watch 2 or 3 episodes of the same thing every day if people are news watchers, or listen to it incessantly, So I can count the number of times that I, heard the same message over the span of a day that was about somebody that had a fall from grace. And it didn't matter if they had done things wonderfully for the last 50 years. They did one thing. They had to go through the process of the fall from grace. And that in the public eye just makes it even, that much more difficult, Howard. And
Yes.
that, I know that. So for people who are even dealing with it in private, though, it's a very challenging place to be.
Well, in some ways there is no private anymore, is there really?
Oh, true.
I mean, even if what you're dealing with is sort of secret and nobody really knows, there's always the concern that somebody's going to know and post it on Facebook or put it in the newspaper. So there isn't private, which is a mixed blessing in a way.
Right.
Hopefully that makes people face up rather than try to keep it a secret. But then the way it is presented in the media or social media is going to be very distorted. I think the key is not to see this as this is a disaster that happened to me and that's the end of me. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you to reevaluate your life. It's an opportunity to find perhaps new purpose, new mission, new vision. It's a real opportunity to do that. And let's not forget that the history of mankind is almost built around the fact that people screw up and then they get redemption through their own efforts. I mean, just look at the Bible, St. Paul, a lot of the saints, St. Augustine. This is what it's about. It's about, I'm here, and it's not a place I want to be, and it forces you to go to a higher place. At one point, I thought about calling this book A Fall to Grace, because a fall gives you the opportunity to find grace, perhaps in a different way or in a way you never thought of.
So if people are stuck with that, like how do I come clean? How do I tell another person, or how do I get this out of my life, this whatever is the incongruent thing that you've done? So do you have some ideas about that, Howard, about how people can come clean, so to speak?
Well, first of all, they've got to come clean themselves, with themselves. I think obviously choosing who you talk to is very, very important. And hopefully you would choose somebody that you trust implicitly to keep a secret and to be respectful of you. Because that's important. If you go to somebody and they say, oh my God, you're awful, I'm going to go to the police right now, and tell them what you've been doing, that's not probably very helpful, unless you probably have if you've committed a big crime, maybe that's an appropriate response. But I think that when you're trying to work this out, you're obviously looking for somebody who is going to respect where you're at and not be judgmental.
Yes,
it's really hard in today's society not be judgmental.
Yeah, and I think that there's when you tell somebody also, you've shared this truth about yourself, and I think that it's also you're asking somebody to help you to figure out how to not do it again. So it's like there's this coming clean sort of bit, and that's part and parcel of how you deal in a healthy way with staying out of shame. Like, so just going to the embarrassed part and not getting into shame and getting stuck there is by admitting that you've done something that's, not right. And then by going, but I'm struggling with it. Because if I wouldn't have been struggling with it, I wouldn't have done it in the first place. So it's almost like you're asking or thinking about who's this team member that's going to help me to navigate through this landscape. Because unless it's something that's a repeated pattern of behavior, if it's a new thing that you've done and that you've just had this big aha, like if you shoplifted for the first time, and it was a big aha, and you went, oh my Lord, I never want to do that again, then you maybe have the internal structure and fortitude to not do that, or out of fear, you maybe would never do it again. Or the partner in that might be the police, or if you're a teenager, it might be your parent that you would go to them and say, like, I did this thing and I actually don't know what to do about it. But then as a team member, they would maybe ask you some questions about, well, what do you think happened right then? Like, what was the temptation? Why did it matter so much to you? So just that the ability to bring somebody else in on the team to help you to ask those introspective questions to get you out of that, staying tied to a story that's not going to serve you.
Absolutely right. I think that's true. And again, people treating you with respect and without judgment, I think is very, very important. Mm-hmm. And I know, and I think that could very well be for a lot of people the first step on their way to redemption, is to have another human being hear what they've said and not be judgmental. I mean, I guess the whole point of confession, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I don't know. I think there's an element of being judgmental, though. I think because, and not judgmental in a harsh way, but just the judgment being of like judicious in your thinking, of being able to go, well, that wasn't the right thing to do. Now, what are you going to do? Yeah, that was dumb. That was dumb, or that may cost you. That may end up biting you in the proverbial butt. Right? So I just want to make sure that people aren't confused that we or that I anyway am think that people need to have the ability to be judicious in their thinking, because then you can't differentiate what's morally intelligent or not morally intelligent. And you and I, Howard, have talked about this a lot, the whole ideas of, civility and humility, and how do those things, come into this whole discussion of redemption. And if we're developing good relationships with people, that we have trusted advisors in our lives, and you and I both had, coaching practices for a number of years, and that we're looked to come and do speaking engagements about topics like redemption and personal transformation and those types of things, that we are judicious in our thinking, both internally, like how we process things ourselves. We think, is that thinking right? Right. Am I? And also about how we judge situations, or how we judge the behaviors of people, which is not the same thing as judging somebody's soul, because that's between them and God.
Yes, and I'm glad you clarified that. That's really what I meant. I meant be judicious. Yes, it's totally fine to say to somebody, well, that was a really dumb thing to do. What were you thinking about? But it's another to recoil with hate. Yes, and as you say, judge somebody's soul rather than their behavior.
Yeah, the disconnection. And because we're both very big promoters of people being, like this whole idea of being very, very collaborative on every level. And so when you're in harmony with yourself, when your activities and behaviors are in alignment with the things that you envision for your life, you're in harmony with yourself. And from that place, you can be in harmony with other people, which is just the coolest state to be in. There's no shame when you're in a state of high positive regard and high self-respect. Then your connection with other people comes from that place of just having high self-respect, so you can respect other people. So that's why the process of redemption is so critical to each individual person, and to bigger even countries and things like that. Is what are the things that we did as a country, or what are the things that we did as a nation that we supported, and then we went, oh, that was a bad move. So looking back into history, I think we have lots of great examples of whole nations who have done things in terms of redemption and redemptive measures with people who've been treated, cruelly or inhumanely or uncivilly.
Yeah, And you're right, because in the end, what does it come down to? Your self-esteem is going to come from your relationships and how people treat you. Mm-hmm. And if in these depths, you can find somebody who's still prepared to treat you with civility and with love, mm-hmm. That is a huge part of the redemptive journey to get you going. There is absolutely no question about that. If you're left alone and isolated, I think it accentuates the denial, the anger, the bitterness, the self-loathing, the shame, and just compounds it even more. Mm-hmm. So clearly that is a very, very important step.
Right, and huge red flags for people who are, if you're listening to the show right now and you're going, I can recognize this in myself, that I'm isolating myself, or I have people in my life that I recognize are isolating themselves. Like, how do I reach out and reconnect with those people to bring them into a healing process where they feel like they have a safe time, safe place, safe person to actually go through some of this redemptive work. And marriages are such a powerful place where we see this happen all the time in our practice. Just because husbands and wives, we're most of the time trying to do our very best for each other, and sometimes that doesn't work out the way that we intended for a multitude of reasons, because there's so many variables and factors, and so just in original families and in blended families, we see just day in, day out, these opportunities for redemption and for asking for, redemption and forgiveness. But that whole process starts with us recognizing when when we have things that need to be forgiven, and then from that position being able to forgive other things. So when we come back after the break, we're going to talk about some of the pragmatics of, how do you actually give forgiveness to yourself? How do you forgive other people? And why does all this matter anyway? As we'll be joined after the break again with Dr. Howard Rankin and talking about his new book, Facing Up the Art and Science of Redemption.
It's your world. Motivate, change, succeed. VoiceAmericaEmpowerment.com.
If you've been searching for fat loss and mental clarity in one place, think ketosis. Maybe you've heard about a ketogenic diet but have been totally turned off by the painstaking effort to do it. Well, agonize no longer, because there is a solution. What could be just as simple and easy as taking your daily vitamins? Visit reallifetraining.expert to find out. Raise your hand and get in on the front end of the total wellness revolution. Get well, manage your mood, clear your mind. Visit reallifetraining.expert now.
Do you or somebody you love have a struggle with abuse? You don't need to be a slave to your abuse anymore. Listen for Beyond Abuse, Beyond Therapy, Beyond Anything with Dr. Lisa Cooney. Dr. Lisa overcame struggles in her own life. 2 decades of sexual, emotional, and physical abuse nearly took their toll. In her 20s, she turned her life around and set upon a path to help others. She can help you find the key to take control of your life, too. Listen every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on the Voice America Empowerment Channel.
Many people believe it's a man's place to stay strong no matter what. It's considered weak if you break. Men deal with all kinds of issues, insecurity, fears, and struggles, but there has been no place to turn to until now. Listen for Fundamentals with host Carl Bobo. We provide the support that men need and the guidance they seek. It's an open and honest forum featuring the topics you want to hear about with the answers that you seek. Listen live Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific and 4 p.m. Eastern on Voice America Empowerment.
Follow us on Twitter for more great ideas at Voice America Empowerment. You are tuned in to Master Your Life. To reach Leaha Mattinson, Dr. Howard Rankin, or their guest, please call in to 1-888-346-9141. That's 1-888-346-9141. Or send an email to Leaha, that's Leaha, at changeyourlife.expert. Now, back to Master Your Life.
Welcome back to Master Your Life. I'm co-host Dr. Howard Rankin, along with host Leaha Mattinson. And today we are talking about redemption. What do you do when you find yourself having screwed up in one way or another? Maybe big time, maybe less so. But how do you find your way back from that? We've been talking about how to face up to those issues, hopefully have people around who can really support you in providing some perspective, which I think is very important. It's very easy at times like that, Leaha, to really lose your sense of perspective and go into a serious decline.
Right. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It is. I'm struck by just from early in my life that I had this big disconnect, and for a multitude of reasons. And because when we look into history, there's always reasons why we do things. But I had gained this enormous amount of weight, and I've talked about that in a few shows along the way. But it was this I had no respect for myself. And again, for as many great reasons as there was, at the end of the day, that whole hurting myself by my own way that I consumed food. And that when I had the aha moment of going, I'm not going to live my life like this anymore, then I turned it into something meaningful because I was able to coach other people about it. And I think we see that with people who figure out how to navigate through difficulties in their life, is that they get themselves through the difficulty and never by themselves. I mean, you always have, a multitude of interventions, fans, cheerleaders, and information that helps you to move yourself out of these places that you get stuck. And then the really powerful part comes when you actually turn that mess into a message of how can I help somebody else navigate through this same thing that I struggled with.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things of my mess was to try to help other people, which in the end is really, for me, what it's about. Help people from my experience of going through that, what I felt and what I learned and what I know about the process, because I've been there. Not just I read about it in a book somewhere. I've been there. And I know what that's like. And again, I cannot stress, I think the turning point for me was to be able to say, okay, what am I meant to do with this? I can turn this into something much bigger. I can turn it into something very positive, and it can provide meaning in my life. And as soon as I focused on that and got off the, I've screwed up badly, I've shame, disgrace, humiliation, as soon as I got on that track, the rest didn't instantly go away by any means, but I had my focus, and that's where I had to put my time and energy. And if you don't do that, you're going to be lost.
Yes.
But if you do that, man, boy, great things can happen. And, remind people of that great line by Oscar Wilde, every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. As a sinner, your future actually could be a lot brighter simply because of going through the experience.
Right. Yeah. One of the most, and I feel like books are often a really good way for people to get healing. And I had read this book by John Bradshaw several years ago, and it was Reclaiming Virtue. And I know I've talked about it often on this show. And because it just had such a profound impact on my understanding of this whole idea of shame, virtue, guilt, redemption, and the reason it meant something to me and why I could read this, it's like probably 2,000-page book. It's huge book. And I read it and I didn't sleep. And I didn't sleep because the stories that he told were about himself and his failings and his struggles with alcoholism and with addiction to sex and pornography and this whole thing about, he was in the seminary. And I remember thinking from my experience in life up to that point, everybody that I met that was quote unquote religious always put on this kind of perfect front, and that there was just no room to actually be imperfect. And so to read this, book of his journey, John Bradshaw's journey, but also he's like a brilliant man. Like, he's brilliant. He's studied and just has so much knowledge, and that he could turn this pain into this wonderful manual for people to be able to take and use in their own redemptive journey, and also to offer other resources and inspirations. So I think that's why this book that you're writing is so important, Howard, to for people to be able to kind of have a guidebook and to realize it's not coming from somebody who actually hasn't experienced some real real difficulties, not coming from a place of perfection, but coming from a place of kind of imperfection, and being able to, really look at that and go, how do I help other people to navigate around mistakes so that they don't make them, or how do I help them to get through so they don't get stuck?
Yeah, and I think that can be a very valuable purpose and meaning for anyone in that situation. I happen to be a writer. I happen to have a lot of background in neuroscience and psychology, and so that helps tell the story and so forth. But you don't have to have that background, A, to learn from the experience, and B, to use that experience to help other people. There's the meaning that comes from it. Absolutely.
Yes. And my son, my youngest son, was invited to volunteer at this Fishes and Loaves, which is a soup kitchen in the city that we live by. And so he was down there peeling potatoes and, visiting with people. And then the homeless folks that were there at that time, a lot of them were struggling with addiction, to drugs and alcohol, definitely. And, their families were in a mess, and the head kitchen guy was also the pastor of the place. So my son got to know him quite well, and absolutely had just nothing but positive regard for this fellow, because he had been through his own addictions and his own living on the street and all this other stuff. And he just collected people to himself, and they felt like they had a place that they could come to where they could talk about, the real challenges in their lives and the things that they were struggling with. And that just made such an impression on my young man. He went back several times and still goes back to visit this pastor. So you don't have to be, you absolutely do not have to be in any sort of a position of any kind. You can reach out at any moment to anybody and help them to see the beauty within themselves. I think that's why we've been given this ability to see light in other people and the goodness in them when we look for it.
Yeah, no question. And I think that's great that your son has that sort of mentor, because I do believe mentors like that are very, very critical in shaping development of young people. So I think that's awesome. It's, people are going to relate to a meaningful, real story, rather than an expert coming down and saying, here are 7 things you need to do if you've screwed up to find redemption. I've never really positioned myself as the expert in anything, because I don't think that works. The thing that I'm most expert is my own experiences and how other people might relate to that. And I do think this speaks to several things, like forgiveness, for example. And how do you forgive yourself? How do you forgive others? Why would you do it at all? Well, again, I think it's part of the healing. It's part of moving from your past into your future. It's part of letting go, which is, very, very difficult. And there is one thing that I think is important, that the Lord's Prayer says, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And what that really means, forgive us our trespasses because we forgive other people. I think this is an important point. If you want people to forgive you, you need to be a forgiving soul as well. And that's where getting out of the revenge fantasies is very important, because, you know what, there probably, maybe even though you screwed up, there are probably people along the way who certainly amplified that, did not help, maybe did things even worse.
Right. So this point would be the important part, is to not hang out with people who want to talk about your revenge fantasies also.
Yes, no, I think that's true, or encourage them in some way.
Yes.
Which, unfortunately, if you look at popular culture, and if you look at movies and you look at video games, that's not the message you're getting.
No, absolutely not. And so with just the concept of forgiveness, Howard, and as coaches, and there's lots of tools that people can use to actually work on to forgive themselves. Can you just mention one tool that is like something that people can use, practically, that if they go, I really need to forgive myself of this one thing today, what would be a tool or a tip or a trick that they could do?
Well, actually, I think there's several things that they could do. I think a part of it is to look around them and see that the world is full of sinners, and they're not the only one who's done that. I think part of it is also to look at it and put it in perspective. I think the danger when you've done something dumb that you regret is that you actually exaggerate it. I'm not saying you should minimize it, but you actually exaggerate it, and you need to try to put that in perspective. And that's where finding somebody else to talk to who can really help put that in perspective for you is important. But for me, the biggest step is asking yourself, what does this mean for me? How do I turn this into meaning and purpose? What am I going to do with this? And if you want, what does God want me to do with this? And I think you start asking yourself that question and looking for the positive of the future in your life, then you're on your way. And
I would just encourage people to write down your answers. Write down the questions and the answers, because thinking them, again, we get caught in that binary brain, and things can run away on us and da-da-da-da-da. So the writing it down is a critical part also of getting it out of your head and onto paper where you can do something with it. Things that just float around in our head often grow or shrink, depending on lots of things, how much we've eaten, how much sleep we've had, who we're hanging around with. When you write things down, it gives you an opportunity to look at them the next day also and to evaluate them from maybe a healthier perspective, or to let somebody else, read what your thoughts are to see if they're accurate or inaccurate. And just that whole taking action physiologically changes things. So just encourage people again to be writing down those thoughts and writing down the exercises and their answers.
And I think the question that we ask on this show is very, very relevant. That might be the first question. Yes. Who am I, and who do I want to be?
Right.
I made this mistake, I screwed up, I did this really stupid thing. Okay, is that who I want to be? That's behind me now. I can choose to continue to do that. I can continue to be influenced by it, or I can say, no, that's not who I want to be. This is what I'm going to do. And that gives you, certainly writing it down is very important, that gives you the focus to get your maybe escape velocity where you get out of the shame, disgrace, and humiliation onto something positive.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And then you can also share it with your mentor or your coach, and to talk about, what would next steps be. Often people will write things down and they're still stuck. They go, well, I don't really know why I did what I did. I'm not particularly clear on why I felt vulnerable in that moment. And so getting a different perspective, like you had mentioned earlier, Howard, is just really, really key. And having those great mentors around us that are going to be wise advisors. And wise advisors are people who have I guess you need to figure out what that is for yourself in your life. If you want advisors that are helping you to grow in your life and change your life, to master your life, then you want people who have life mastery at some level that's higher than yours. Not maybe Bob down at the bar, unless, of course, that. I like Bob. Sorry, Bob. Just kidding.
Well, again, I think that's critical. The environment that you're in is going to be a big influence on how able and how successfully you're able to do these things of facing up, of looking squarely at what you've done, of deciding what this means for you and where you want to go from here, how to make it meaningful and purposeful, and starting down that path. That's very hard to do on your own.
Yes, and I think you bring up a really good point of the environment, because it isn't just who you're hanging around with, it's what you're ingesting in your brain every day and taking in. So are you watching multiple amounts of media and TV shows that really are like dismissive about the things that you don't want to have in your life, or permissive, so rude, crude, and exactly. So if that's not what you want, then filling yourself up with that it's like you have control over that environmental piece. Then exercise your right and exercise your, responsibility to take care of yourself also.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And this model that we've been talking about of the various stages and the important things you can do really applies to many, many, many things, We're not just talking about people who've committed, really horrible crimes. We're not talking about that. We're talking about anything that violates your moral integrity. Anything that you feel ashamed about that you did. And that you want, again, who do you want to be? And if you want to be someone different, not the person who does that, how are you going to do it? Because here's the really cool thing, Leaha, you can do it. You can always escape. You can always, right? You can always escape. You can always reshape yourself.
Yes, and you can always do it right now. It doesn't have to be 10 minutes from now or 10 years from now. Change and making positive steps are a future, like they're a present activity. Nothing happens in the past and nothing happens in the future. The only time that things happen is right now. And right now, we're really looking forward to your new book coming out called Facing Up, The Art and Science of Redemption. Dr. Howard Rankin. Be looking for that in 2017, and we will keep you posted as we get closer to the publishing date. In the meanwhile, I also invite you to take a look at my book also about the Essential Guide to Building Courage, Self-Respect, and Wellness, Silver Linings, which is available on Amazon.com. And you can check me out and my business on reallifetraining.com, where you can see the public speaking engagements that we do, and also on Howard's site at psychologywriter.com. Howard, as usual, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise. You have a great week.
Thank you. And we ask you to join us again for Master Your Life, where you can get insight, intelligence, and inspiration to live a wonderful, meaningful life. Have a fantastic week.
Thank you for being a part of our show today. Master Your Life with Leaha Mattinson and Dr. Howard Rankin can be heard every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time and 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Now, go enjoy your successful life.